3 hours after that phone call, I was sitting in a lawyer's office in downtown Toronto, signing papers that would change everything. By the time my son arrived at my house the next morning, expecting a check for $250,000, he'd find the locks changed, the driveway empty, and an envelope taped to the front door. Inside that envelope was a single piece of paper that would make him scream loud enough for the neighbors to hear. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What would you do if your own child demanded $250,000, and you discovered it was all a lie? Stay with me on Velvet Reckoning, because this father's revenge will shock you. Let me back up 6 weeks to explain how a retired automotive engineer from Mississauga ended up teaching his 34-year-old son the hardest lesson of his life. My name is Robert Chun. I'm 63 years old and I've lived in the Greater Toronto area for 40 years after emigrating from Hong Kong with barely enough English to order coffee. I worked at the Ford plant in Oakville for 35 years, starting on the assembly line and eventually becoming a senior quality control engineer. My wife, Linda, passed away from cancer 3 years ago. We raised one son, David, who we thought we'd prepared for the real world. Apparently, we were wrong. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when my phone rang. He was in my workshop in the basement refinishing an old dining table I'd picked up at an estate sale in Burlington. Woodworking had become my therapy after Linda died. Something about bringing old furniture back to life felt meaningful. Dad, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. David's voice had that edge to it. The same tone he'd used when he was 16 and had crashed my car, the same tone when he dropped out of his MBA program after one semester because he'd found a better opportunity. What's going on, son? Not over the phone. Can I come by tomorrow morning? Said yes. Jessica will come too. Jessica was his wife of 8 years. They lived in a new build in Milton, drove matching white BMWs, and had a lifestyle that always seemed just slightly beyond what David's income as a sales manager should support. But I never asked questions. He was an adult. His choices were his own. Of course, I'll put the coffee on. They arrived at exactly this. He watched from my living room window as they pulled into my driveway in David's BMW X5. Jessica was carrying a leather portfolio. David wore a blazer over a golf shirt. They looked like they were heading to a business presentation. In a way, I suppose they were. He opened the door before they could knock. Come in, coffee's ready. We settled in the living room, the same room where Linda and I had watched David grow up. Where we'd celebrated his high school graduation. Where we'd hosted his wedding reception because the venue they'd originally wanted was too expensive. That should have been my first clue. David didn't touch his coffee. Jessica opened her portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers. Dad, I'm going to be straight with you, David began. My business is in trouble. He sat down my mug. What business? You work for a telecommunications company. He quit that job 6 months ago, Dad. I've been running my own consulting firm, business development consulting for tech startups. 6 months. I'd been unemployed for 6 months and hadn't mentioned it once during our weekly Sunday phone calls. Jessica's been helping me with the admin side, he continued. We've landed some decent contracts, but we invested heavily in setting up the office, hiring staff, marketing. You know how it is. You have to spend money to make money. I didn't know how it was when I started my career. You earn money before you spend it, but I kept my mouth shut. Jessica took over, her voice smooth and rehearsed. The issue is cash flow, Robert. We have signed contracts worth over $500,000, but most of that revenue won't come in until Q2 next year. Meanwhile, we have immediate expenses, payroll, rent, equipment leases. How much are we talking about? He asked, though I suspected I already knew. David leaned forward. We need a bridge loan, $250,000. It's temporary, Al. Completely temporary. Once those contracts start paying out, we'll pay you back with interest. Think of it as an investment opportunity. 250,000 pesos. $250,000. More than I'd earned in my first decade at Ford combined. That's a lot of money, David. We know, Dad. Trust me, we know. But we've run the numbers. Jessica has a detailed spreadsheet. Our projected revenue for next year is $800,000. We just need to bridge this gap. He looked at Jessica. She nodded enthusiastically, pulling out printed spreadsheets covered in colored charts and graphs. We've already talked to the banks, David added quickly. But because the business is less than a year old, they want personal guarantees we can't provide. Our house is already mortgaged and Jessica's parents are retired on a fixed income. You're the only one who can help us, Dad. The only one who can help us. Not would you consider helping us or we'd appreciate your advice. The only one who can help us. As if my helping them was a foregone conclusion, an obligation. You need to think about this, I said. David's face tightened. Dad, we need an answer by tomorrow morning. We have payroll due Friday. If we can't make payroll, the whole company collapses. Everything we've built will be gone tomorrow morning. I know it's fast, but we're in crisis mode here. The accountant says we need the funds in our business account by Thursday at the latest. Jessica touched my hand. Robert, we wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. This business is David's dream. It's our future. It's going to set us up for life. He looked at my son. Really looked at him. When had he become this person, this man in a blazer who talked about cash flow and bridge loans in crisis mode? Where was the boy who'd spent summers helping me build a deck in the backyard, who'd been fascinated by how engines worked, who'd once said he wanted to be an engineer just like his dad? Let me sleep on it, I said. Call me tomorrow afternoon. They didn't like that answer. I could see it in the glance they exchanged, but they couldn't push harder without seeming aggressive. After they left, I sat in Linda's favorite chair and stared at the fireplace. 250,000 pesos. It was a staggering amount, but I had it. After 35 years at Ford, after being careful with money, after the life insurance payout from Linda's death, after selling our cottage in Muskoka because I couldn't bear to go there without her, I had just over $400,000 in my retirement accounts and savings. David knew I had it, though. We discussed my finances last year when I'd updated my will. The question wasn't whether I could afford to give it to him. The question was whether I should. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did something I probably should have done months ago. I started digging. But what I uncovered in just one night would destroy everything my son told me. Keep watching on Velvet Reckoning to see how one father's investigation exposed a web of lies. First, I called my neighbor's son, Marcus, who worked in commercial real estate in Toronto. He asked him about typical office leases for a small consulting firm. It gave me a range far lower than what David's expenses would require. Then I looked up David's business online. Chen Consulting Group had a slick website, but almost no online presence otherwise. No LinkedIn company page with employees, no reviews, no case studies, no press releases about those $500,000 contracts. He called an old friend from the plant who'd retired a few years before me and started his own small manufacturing consulting business. He asked him about startup costs. His entire first year, including insurance, licensing, website, marketing, and equipment, had cost him less than $30,000. And he was dealing with physical products and site visits, not just business consulting. By 3 a.m, I'd seen enough. My son wasn't running a struggling business. He was running a fantasy. Those contracts probably didn't exist. That revenue projection was fiction. And my $250,000 wouldn't save a business. It would fund a lifestyle. The BMWs, the house in Milton, Jessica's designer handbags, their annual trips to the Caribbean, David's golf club membership. It all added up to a family living well beyond their means, and now the bills were coming due. And that was supposed to be the solution. When David called at noon the next day, I had my answer ready. Dad, so what do you think? Can you help us out, David? I've been thinking about this all night and I need to understand something. This consulting business. Show me the actual signed contracts. Show me your business registration, your tax filings, bank statements showing the business account. Silence. Dad, this isn't about paperwork. This is about trust. I'm your son, and because you're my son, I'm asking to see the documentation. Any bank would ask for the same thing. We don't have time for this. Parole is Friday. It's Wednesday afternoon. We need the money tomorrow, Dad. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Always urgent. Always a crisis. Then my answer is, no, David. I'm not giving you $250,000. The explosion was immediate. Are you serious right now? You're going to let my business fail? You're going to let me lose everything? I'm not letting you lose anything. I'm choosing not to fund a business I don't believe exists. How dare you? How dare you say that to me? Mom would be ashamed of you right now. That line, that single line about Linda, my wife who'd worked 2 jobs to help pay for his university. My wife who'd gone without so David could have hockey equipment and music lessons and a car for his decimosexta birthday. Something inside me went very cold. Don't you ever use your mother's memory to manipulate me. I'm not manipulating anyone. I'm trying to save my livelihood and my own father won't help me. What kind of parent refuses to help their child? The kind who recognizes when their child is lying to them. He hung up on me. Jessica called 30 minutes later. Her voice was different now. No more smooth professionalism. This was anger, pure and raw. Robert, I don't know what David said to you, but you're making a huge mistake. We came to you in good faith. We showed you the numbers. We offered you interest. And you're treating us like we're trying to scam you. Jessica, where are your kids? The question threw her off. What? You and David, you've been married 8 years. Eve never heard you mention wanting children. Now I'm wondering why. That's none of your business. It is when you're asking me for $250,000. Children are expensive. They require stability. They require parents who have sustainable income. You can't afford children because you can't afford your current lifestyle. You arrogant. I'm not giving you the money, Jessica. And I think you knew I wouldn't. I think you and David have been planning what comes next. I was guessing, but her sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit close to home. You regret this, she said, and hung up. That evening, I received an email from David. The subject line read, Final Chance. Robert, I'm going to give you one more opportunity to do the right thing. Mom always said family helps family. She would never have let me fail like this. Transfer $250,000 to the account number below by 9 de la mañana tomorrow morning, or accept that you've chosen money over your own son. Once you make this choice, there's no going back. Think carefully about what matters more to you, your retirement fund or your relationship with your only child, David. The email was CC'd to Jessica and to David's best friend, Graham, presumably as witnesses to my betrayal. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, Patricia, who I'd worked with when setting up Linda's estate. Then I called her. Patricia, I need to make some changes fast. We met the next morning at 8. By 9:30, we'd restructured everything. My house, which I owned outright, was transferred into an irrevocable trust with specific terms. My savings and retirement accounts were moved into a new account at a different bank. I updated my will, removing David as the primary beneficiary, and instead establishing a charitable foundation in Linda's name, focused on supporting families dealing with cancer. David could still inherit, but only if he met specific conditions, maintained steady employment for 5 consecutive years, completed financial counseling, and demonstrated he could live within his means. Until then, everything went to the foundation. Finally, I did something I'd been considering since Linda died. I put my house up for sale. The Mississauga real estate market was hot. My realtor, Karen, said we'd have offers within a week. He told her I needed to close within 30 days. She raised an eyebrow but nodded. That afternoon at exactly 3 de la tarde, David and Jessica showed up at my house unannounced. I watched from the living room as David tried his key in the front door lock. It didn't work. They had them changed that morning. I pounded on the door. Dad, open up. I know you're in there. He opened the door but left the screen door latched between us. The deadline passed, David said, his face red. You really chose money over me? No, David. He chose reality over fantasy. He chose not to enable your irresponsibility. Inhábil? I'm trying to build something. I'm trying to be successful. You're trying to maintain a lifestyle you can't afford by guilting your father into bankrupting himself. That's not ambition, son. That's entitlement. Jessica pushed forward. We'll take you to court. Elder financial abuse. We'll prove you're not mentally competent to manage your finances. He smiled. He actually smiled. Good luck with that. He met with my lawyer this morning. eBay had a complete cognitive assessment. He passed with flying colors. Everything is documented. What did you do? David's voice dropped to something dangerous. He protected myself. The house is in an irrevocable trust. My savings are secured. My will has been updated. You can't guilt me, threaten me, or manipulate me anymore. You're insane. You've lost your mind. No, David. He found my clarity. Your mother and I, we made a mistake. We gave you everything you wanted, and we never taught you the value of earning it yourself. We let you grow up thinking the world owed you success, that family owed you money, that you could fail upward because someone would always catch you. I can't believe this. My own father. Your own father loves you enough to let you fail because that's how you'll learn. That's how you'll grow. Jessica grabbed David's arm. Come on. It's not going to help. Let's go. As they walked back to the BMW, David turned around. When you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you, don't call me. You're on your own. Expect nothing less, I said and closed the door. The house sold in 5 days for $40,000 over asking. The buyers, a young couple with a baby, needed possession quickly because their condo lease was ending. Perfect timing. I hired movers for the furniture I wanted to keep, donated most of Linda's things to a women's shelter, and scheduled an estate sale for everything else. My woodworking tools I kept. The rest could go. 2 weeks later, I was signing the closing papers. The realtor handed me a check. My phone buzzed. David had sent a text. Heard you sold the house. Running away. Pathetic. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove north. They found a small town near Georgian Bay called Thornbury. Population 3,000, a place where people knew their neighbors, where life moved at a different pace, where a 63-year-old man could start fresh. I'd rented a 2-bedroom cottage sight unseen just from photos online. It was old, needed work, and was perfect. The landlord, a woman named Margaret in her 70s, met me at the property with keys and homemade butter tarts. Welcome to town, Robert. You picked a good spot. The views of the bay are something else. Thank you, Margaret. I'm looking forward to a quieter life. Running from something or running to something? She asked it kindly without judgment. Both, I suppose. She patted my arm. Best kind of running there is. I spent the first week unpacking, setting up my workshop in the garage, and exploring the town. Thornbury had a main street with local shops, a farmer's market on Saturdays, a library, and a community center that offered woodworking classes. People nodded hello when I walked past. Nobody knew me. Nobody expected anything from me, and it was liberating. On my 10th day there, I got a call from Patricia, my lawyer. Robert, David's been trying to reach me. He wants to know about the trust terms. He told him that information is privileged unless you authorize me to share it. Did he threaten you? He tried. I explained that I've been practicing law for 30 years and don't respond well to intimidation. He hung up rather quickly after that. Good. Don't tell him anything. Ella figure it out on his own. There is something else. Jessica filed for divorce. He sat down heavily on my porch steps when 3 days ago. In her filing, she cites financial instability and dishonesty about their financial situation. Apparently, David had been hiding their debt from her, credit cards, personal loans, line of credit on the house. They're over 200,000 pulgadas debt, not counting the mortgage. 200,000, so, my 250 would have covered their personal debt, not any business. There probably was no business at all. How is he handling it? According to the filing, he moved back into his parents' house. Patricia posed. Robert, he moved in with Jessica's parents, not with you. Of course, because I'm the villain in his story. No, you're the parent who set a boundary. There is a difference. After we hung up, I walked down to the bay. The autumn colors were spectacular. The maples burned red and gold against the blue water. A couple walked past with their dog. The dog, a golden retriever, stopped to investigate me, tail wagging. Sorry, the man said. Bear's friendly but nosy. I don't mind. He scratched Bear's ears. Beautiful day. First fall here? The woman asked. First, everything here. Used moved to town. Well, welcome. I'm Tom. This is my wife, Sharon. We run the hardware store on Main Street. Do you need anything? Come va. Robert, and I'll definitely take you up on that. Got a cottage that needs some TLC. The old Mackenzie place. Tom guessed. Margaret mentioned she'd rented it out. Good bones on that place. Needs someone who can appreciate it. We talked for 20 minutes about the cottage, about the town, about the best spots to watch the sunset. When they left, I realized I'd smiled more in that conversation than I had in the last 6 months. That night, I called my younger brother, Michael, who lived in Vancouver. We'd always been close, but after Linda died, I'd pulled away from everyone. Robbie, is that you? I've been worried sick. David called me last week saying you'd had a breakdown. I haven't had a breakdown, Mike. I've had a breakthrough. He told him everything. The demand for money, the lies, the threats, the restructuring of my estate, the move to Thornbury. Mika was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he laughed. Good for you, big brother. About time you put yourself first. Do you think I did the right thing? I think Linda would be proud of you. She always said David needed to learn accountability. You two were just too soft on him to do it while she was alive. I miss her, Mac. I know you do. But she wouldn't want you to spend your retirement being manipulated by your son. They want you living. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're starting to do. Winter came to Thornbury. He took up cross-country skiing. He joined a woodworking guild at the community center where I met a group of retirees who gathered every Tuesday to work on projects. He refinished furniture and sold pieces at the local antique shop. I volunteered at the library, reshelving books and helping with the senior tech support program. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't defined by grief or obligation. I was just Robert, a man learning to build a new life. David didn't call on Christmas or my birthday in January. Radio silence. Then in mid-March, I got a text. Dad, can we talk? I didn't respond immediately. He needed to think. Patricia had advised me to be cautious. He might be wanting to apologize, but he might also be setting up another ask. Be prepared for either. 3 days later, I replied, Yes, call me Saturday afternoon. Saturday came. The phone rang at exactly 2. Dad, David's voice was different, quieter, tired. David. I'm calling to apologize for everything. For the things I said, for the way I treated you, for trying to manipulate you with Mom's memory. That was unforgivable. He waited. These felt rehearsed. Jessica left me. You probably know that. And she was right too. He'd been lying to her about money for years. The consulting business was never real, Dad. Man, I tried to make it real, but I had no clients, no contracts, just business cards and a website and a lot of big talk. No, son. You knew. I did my research the night after you asked for the money. It took me about 3 hours to figure out the truth. It made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Of course you did. You always were thorough. What happened, David? When did things get so out of control? I don't know. Gradually, then all at once, you know. Jessica had expensive taste. I wanted to keep up with my colleagues who all seemed to have more than me. We bought the house that was too expensive, and then we had to furnish it. We leased the cars because everyone at my level had nice cars. And then I lost my job for padding my expense reports, but I couldn't tell Jessica because she'd leave me. So, I pretended I'd quit to start a business. And I just kept lying about everything. Where are you now? Living with Jessica's parents in Ajax, sleeping on their pull-out couch, working as a sales associate at Best Buy because it's the only place that would hire me, making $15 an hour. I'm 34 years old, Dad, and I'm starting over from scratch. That must be hard. It's humiliating, but it's also I don't know. It's real. For the first time in years, I'm living in reality. I pay my own phone bill. I buy my own groceries. I take the bus because I can't afford car insurance. And it's horrible, but it's also kind of a relief. He understood that more than he knew. Dad, I'm not calling to ask for money. I know I burned that bridge. I'm calling because I'm in counseling, financial counseling, and regular therapy. And my therapist said I needed to make amends to apologize without expecting forgiveness. I appreciate that, David. Do you think you could ever forgive me? Not now, I know, but someday. He looked out my window at Georgian Bay at the ice just starting to break up as spring approached. I forgave you the day I drove away, son. What I couldn't do was continue to enable you, but I never stopped loving you. It was crying now. I could hear it. I don't deserve that. Probably not. But that's how love works sometimes. We talked for another hour. He told me about his therapy sessions, about the bankruptcy he was filing, about his plans to rebuild his credit and his life. He asked about my new town. I told him about my woodworking, my new friends, the peace I'd found. Before we hung up, he said, Dad, could I maybe come visit sometime? Not soon, but when I've got some money saved up, I'd like to see where you're living. Either like that, David. When you're ready. After the call ended, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and watched the sunset paint the bay in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. How did it go with David? Better than expected. Maybe he's starting to grow up. And how are you doing? He thought about that question. Really thought about it. I'm doing well, Mac. Really well. And that was for the first time in a long time. He wasn't waiting for the next crisis, the next demand, the next disappointment. He wasn't measuring my worth by how much I could give or sacrifice or rescue. I was just living, building furniture, making friends, watching the seasons change over Georgian Bay. 6 months later in September, David texted asking if he could visit for a weekend. He'd been working at Best Buy for 8 months, had enrolled in online accounting courses, was living in a small apartment in Oshawa with 2 roommates, and had saved enough to take the bus to Thornbury. He picked him up at the bus station. He looked different, thinner, older. He wore jeans and a simple sweatshirt. No designer, anything. Thanks for letting me come, Dad. Jude home is always open to you, son. Used not your childhood home because I don't live there anymore. Ismail. A real smile. Fair point. That weekend, I taught him basic woodworking. We built a bookshelf together in my garage workshop, just like we used to build things when he was a kid. We talked about his therapy, his goals, his regrets. He apologized again, more specifically this time, for individual things he'd said and done. On Sunday evening, before he left, he handed me an envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a check for $500. "David, you don't have to. It's not repayment, Dad. I'll never be able to repay you for the years of support you and Mom gave me. This is just it symbolic. It's the first money I've saved since starting over. And I wanted to give it to you. Not because you need it, but because I need to. I need to prove to myself that I can contribute, that I can give, not just take." He looked at my son, really looked at him, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. I saw the boy who'd wanted to be an engineer, who'd been curious and hardworking and kind. It was still in there, just older and finally wiser. "I'm proud of you, son," he says, filled with tears. Yeah. He deposited the check and then I made a matching donation to Linda's foundation. $500 toward cancer support services in honor of David Chen, who was learning what his mother always wanted to teach him, that the best things in life can't be bought, they have to be earned. A year after that, David got promoted to assistant manager at Best Buy. He finished his accounting certificate. He started dating a teacher he'd met at his therapy group, a woman named Priya, who drove a 10-year-old Honda, and packed her own lunches, and understood what rebuilding a life looked like. He visited Thornbury 4 times that year. Each time, he stayed a little longer, relaxed a little more, seemed a little more like the son I'd always hoped he'd become. On what would have been Linda's 65th birthday, David and I drove to Toronto and visited her grave together. We hadn't done that since the funeral. David brought flowers. He brought the photo of the 3 of us from his high school graduation. "Mom would be proud of you," David said quietly, not looking at me. "She'd be proud of both of us. Do you think she'd forgive me for how I treated you?" He put my hand on his shoulder. "Son, she forgave you before you even did anything wrong. That's what parents do. But she also would have done exactly what I did. She would have let you fall so you could learn to stand up on your own." We stood there for a long time. 2 men learning to be father and son in a new way in the shadow of the woman who'd loved us both enough to want us to be better than we were. As we walked back to the car, David said, "Dad, thank you for not giving me the money, for changing the locks, for moving away, for making me figure it out myself. It's the best thing you ever did for me." Ismail. Jude's mother would say it was the most loving thing I could do. She'd be right. And she would have been. Sometimes love means saying yes. Sometimes it means saying no. And sometimes the hardest and most important times it means walking away so the people we love can find their own way home. That's what I learned in my little town by Georgian Bay. That's what I hope I taught my son, and that's what I'll carry forward for whatever years I have left. Not every story has a perfect ending, but this one I think has a true one. And sometimes that's even better. If this story of tough love and redemption moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to Velvet Reckoning for more real-life reckonings, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done?